Welcome to Ranger Stories. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am the creator of Jump Rangers, and this is the show where I read things that I'm writing in the Jump Rangers universe, probably edit and discuss them for your viewing pleasure. Today we're reading Jump Rangers, A Game Called Conquest, Chapter 4. If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of Ranger Stories, you can find those episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/jumprangers. Let's begin. Did the Sarge and I ever dare to imagine that a whole colony of space mice could be working and living in the heart of a Saurian mothership? No, we did not. When we left Melinda Nova in the stinky safety of her hammock, behind the walls of the mothership's waste disposal system, we figured we'd be gone for a day or two. We figured we'd be gone for a day or so. Now we were locked inside a charmingly assembled animal pen inside a stable made of old Saurian parts, behind bars that looked as though. So we're just going to change this a little bit. Behind bars that looked as though they'd been carefully cleaned and maintained at least once a week since getting welded 100 years ago, with a trash lizard sleeping right next door. So let's just read that again. Did the Sarge and I ever dare to imagine that a whole colony of space mice could be working and living in the heart of a Saurian mothership? No, we did not. When we left Melinda Nova in the stinky safety of her hammock behind the walls of the mothership's waste disposal system, we figured we'd be gone for a day or so. Now we were locked inside a charmingly assembled animal pen. I think that's probably too many words. Behind bars that looked as though they'd been carefully cleaned and maintained at least once a week since getting welded 100 years ago, with a trash lizard sleeping right next door. That's nice. Melinda was going to need to get off this mothership when it docked with Blister City, which is the Saurian spaceport on Planet Link. Getting off this ship without getting hurt or killed is going to be a lot easier with our help. So the Sarge and I can't afford to just sit here in this cell and wait to see what happens. Just as importantly, space mice are living in the heart of a Saurian mothership. If we just shrink down a little smaller and escape through the bars of our cell, how are we going to learn anything? Wars get started because people do stupid things in moments like these. Both the Sarge and I wanted to start things off right between humans and the space mice who were holding us captive. But Wrench, you might be thinking. You're in a cell that's made for trash lizards. Things are already off to a bad start. Shouldn't you worry about making first impressions later? Let me tell you, I made those same observations to the Sarge. Understand that the Sarge is a Xeno Ranger, okay? Dealing with weird alien stuff is kind of his thing. So this is the part where I trust his judgment, and what he told me... There's too many ands. So this is the part where I trust his judgment. What he told me is that everyone gets scared when they're dealing with things they don't understand. Think about the hard rule. If something is too hard for someone else to do, then who else but a Jump Ranger is going to try and get it done? Whoever these space mice are, making friends is too hard for them right now. That means it's up to us. Besides, the good rule says that a Jump Ranger does things that let other people look up to us as examples. The smart rule says that we should always try and figure things out before jumping into action. Sticking around, finding out what's going on, and seeing if we can't make some new friends is a lot more code of the Ranger than just splitting and pretending like none of this ever happened. Still, we needed to work fast. In a few days, we'd be at Planet Link. That's a misspelling that we're going to fix real quick. Getting Melinda off this mothership was still a priority for us. What I'm saying is the pressure was on. Taking apart my data deck. Rating the Sarge's data deck for extra processing power and memory. I rigged up a machine powerful enough to run some intelligent programming. Hunched over my new project. For the next 2 days, I started writing software to break down the squeaks these space mice were making at us and teach itself how to translate. Them. Every time one of these mice came into the stables, either to feed us or check on us, I had the Sarge keep them talking for as long as possible. Slowly and surely, I fed the data deck everything it needed to know. Not long into our imprisonment, a particularly fancy-looking mouse came to see what we were up to. His cloak and hood were made of fine brown cloth, and he wore jewelry made of bright metals and a few loose shards of octonium. Around his gut he wore a girdle of finely woven superconductive wires. His adornments were fashioned out of parts his community had scavenged from some discarded Saurian tech had been rooting through in the waste disposal airlock. Most of the parts were things I recognized, even if they'd been crafted into something pretty and nice. Whoever this was, he was important to the community. All the other mice paid deference to him, staying out of his way and keeping quiet when he spoke. With what seemed like a serious demeanor, he tried questioning the Sarge for about 20 minutes. Of course, he had no idea what the Sarge was saying. Sitting on the floor of our livestock pen, I just captured the audio and kept working on my program. Our second night was when things finally came together. Our second night of imprisonment was when things finally came together for us. One of the mouse guards had poked his head in to take away the engraved metal bowls with which they'd served us our dinner. Boiled grains with some crunchy, spicy grilled vegetables on top, and they squeaked a passing comment at us as the Sarge passed the dishes through the bars. Maybe you're all locked up in a pen, but at least for tonight you're not eating that tummy rot you people call food. My program was working. My data deck was translating the guard's language into humanese. In my excitement, I attracted the attention and curiosity of the guard. According to the Sarge, this was because I was jumping up and down and cackling, and I can tell you right now the Sarge is lying to you. I'm pretty sure the Sarge is lying. What's important here is the fact that I'd invented a way to communicate with space mice. Pulling the Sarge aside, I think we can just delete the lying part. I don't think that really is necessary. According to the Sarge, this was because I was jumping up and down and cackling. What's important here is the fact that I'd invented a way to communicate with space mice. Pulling the Sarge aside, I asked him what we should say. Just be yourself, the Sarge told me. Typing madly, I explained that I'd modified my data deck to scan the mothership, and that I'd picked up their life signs all the way up in the undersort quarters. If they know what we eat, then they must know that we're usually not this small. So I also explained that I'd invented a miniaturization suit that let the Sarge and I get small enough to climb down, see or who or what was alive down here, and maybe introduce ourselves. That's too much. If they know what we eat, then they must also know that we're usually not this small. So I also explained that I'd invented a miniaturization suit that let the Sarge and I get small enough to climb down here and introduce ourselves. I like that. Maybe tell them that we mean them no harm, the Sarge advised. And we mean you no harm. Confident in my effort at first contact with an alien species, I let my data deck translate for me. Just as soon as my data pad started spitting out squeaks and squeals, the guard's eyes grew wide, begging us to wait, as if there was any place we could go. The guard dashed out from the room. Moments later, he returned with the fancy mouse we'd seen just a little bit earlier, a mouse whose name, according to the translation software, was Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak of the lizard ship Vitriol. For short, we got away with calling him Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak. Sitting down with Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak, we started working out the details of what exactly was going on. Planet Mist is what we call the homeworld these space mice come from. And so this is the point where I need to ask you to stop calling them space mice. Mistlings. Call them mistlings. Not that far from Planet Link as these things go, Mist is a planet in the Saurian Empire. Long ago, maybe about 900 years ago Earth time, the Saurian horde landed on Planet Mist and started strip mining, like Saurians are wont to do. Most mistlings either lived as serfs under nobility like Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak, or they lived and worked in guilds where they practiced a trade. Nobody on Planet Mist was prepared for the Saurian invasion. So far, this was sounding like a pretty familiar story. Fast as they could, the mistlings organized a war guild and urged their serfs and guild mice to enlist. With the help of the Science Guild, the war guild started putting together a resistance to repel the Saurian horde. For about 300 years, the Mistlings fought for their homeworld against the invading Saurians. Have you ever heard of the spore? No? So, you know there are giant space dinosaurs. You know there are giant space robots. Giant space bugs are also a thing, just in case you weren't aware. Inside giant spores, they travel between the stars as dormant larvae. When they crash into a planet, the spores open up. The larvae start to eat. One of them grows into a queen, and the rest will fatten up and build a hive. From that moment on, spore bugs are scouring the planet for any sign of technology. When they find something technological, they eat it up and use the energy to build more hives. Spore hives work like terraforming machines. They change the atmosphere, filling it with spore gas. If you breathe the spore gas, you start losing your higher brain functions. All the things you've learned how to do over the course of your life start going out the airlock, and you become very easy prey for the spore bugs. What's more, spore gas is milky white and thick as soup. Having an atmosphere pumped full of that stuff can make it very hard to see. Obviously, spore bugs don't rely on their vision nearly as much as people do. When spores start landing on a saurian world, the saurian horde has a very, very hard time dealing with that. On planet Mist, saurian bases have been gobbled up and driven off the planet. Now, let's fix this. Now there's only a few well-defended mining operations left. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. Just a little more than 300 years after the saurian horde invaded Mist, the spores showed up. Before the saurians could control them, there were too many hives to stop the invasion. Why do you think we call it Planet Mist? By the time humans arrived aboard the saurian motherships, Planet Mist was long since covered in spore gas. What I got from Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak is that the spore bugs didn't arrive on Mist by accident. One of their guilds, a League of Scouts, with the ability to teleport between worlds, brought the spores to their homeworld to drive the saurians away. According to these nomads, as Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak called them, I'm going to go ahead and capitalize nomads. The spore bugs will spend the next 10,000 years repairing the planet and erasing the last traces of the saurian invasion, and the last traces of Mistling civilization right along with it. Eventually, the spore hives will launch their larvae into space. The hives will wither and crumble to dust. Any living species that the saurians have failed to destroy in their conquest and plunder will be free to thrive. If the Mistlings evacuated, which they did, they would eventually be free to return and reclaim their homeworld. Coming together in a great congress, the noble mice and the guilds of Mist discussed the plan the nomads had offered them. And they agreed that evacuating their home was too much to ask. And they decided. Fighting was a way of life to which the Mistlings were fast adapting, and they wanted to win the war. The nomads didn't listen. Against the wishes of the Mistling Congress, the nomads went ahead and brought the spores to Planet Mist, while spore hives spread across the planet's surface, and while the saurian horde waged war against them in an effort to stop the infestation from growing. The Mistlings evacuated. With the help of the nomads, many Mistlings set up colonies on worlds far outside the Saurian Empire. Others, like Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak, have survived in much the same way that we have. Sneaking aboard Saurian motherships, they have tucked themselves away and built homes as best they can. In 300 years of war, you couldn't force the Saurians to leave? More than 300 years, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak explained. The Saurians live for war and conquest, and we were pretty new to it. So, what other option did you have? Didn't the nomads save your homeworld? Save it for who? For the next 9,000 years, the Mistlings have to live like refugees. Will I ever see the splendor of our home? Will my children? Will my children's children? Once the nomads were a respected guild, they betrayed their people, and they live in exile. They're in exile? That's right. So what happened to all those colonies they helped you set up beyond the Saurian Empire? Thankfully, the nomads have not yet abandoned them. Without the flickering, those colonies would certainly be lost. Nomads live as wanderers, traveling from colony to colony and helping when they're needed. But they can never live among us. Never again. To me, it seemed like maybe the nomads saved their planet and their people, but the more I asked about it, the more agitated and uncomfortable Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak became. To keep things positive, I asked how much the Mistlings knew about human beings. Without telling me too much, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak hinted that many of the same motherships and colonies where humans had settled had Mistling colonies too. If we were watching the Saurians from behind the walls, the Mistlings were watching us. In places too deep and well hidden for humanity to ever find them, the Mistlings have been thriving since long before the invasion of Earth. When I asked Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak whether Mistlings had any relationship with the mice we used to see on Earth, from the mice with Earth mice, as we know them. So we're going to just fix that. When I asked Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak whether Mistlings had any relationship with Earth mice from way back before the Saurian invasion, all they could tell me was that the nomads had helped Mistlings build colonies on many worlds throughout their history. Maybe there was a connection, but Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak didn't know for sure. If I wanted an answer, I would need to speak to the Guild. I would need to speak with the Guild of Records. Not that the Guild of Records would ever speak with me. Why wouldn't they speak with me? Mistlings have survived by keeping our existence a secret, they explained. To share our history with outsiders would be a terrible risk. But you've shared your history with me. We're sharing history right now. True, but I have not decided to let you go. See, this is what the Sarge and I were worried about. No matter how tall or short they are, grown-ups always think they're in control. Listen, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak. The Sarge and I can leave any time we want. If you attacked us right now, even that wouldn't stop us from leaving. We're hoping it's worth our time to stay, at least a little while. You're telling me that we're living in the same spaces. We share the same enemies. We share the same resources. Seems to me like we should help each other out. The only person who helps my people is I, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak of the lizard ship Vitriol. I gotta add that. I'm not trying to be rude, okay, but isn't that perspective kind of limiting? If what you say is true, and if you can leave any time you wish, then the time for you to leave has come. Can we talk some more? If the Sarge and I wind up back here on the Vitriol, can we at least come back and visit? Okay. If the Sarge and I wind up back here on the Vitriol, can we at least come back and visit? That's too many backs. If the Sarge and I ever return to the Vitriol, can we at least come back and visit? I see nothing to gain by doing so. Well, we can share technology. We can tell you things we've learned about the Saurians that you might not already know. Maybe there's some aspects of our culture you might like. We can share foods and art and music and enough! If you're still here in the morning, I will decide what is to be done with you. If you can leave beforehand, it will save me the trouble. Well, can we at least have our firecrackers back? And that was the end of the conversation. Having learned whatever they wanted to learn about us, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak stormed out of the barn or the warehouse or whatever this place was supposed to be. Nobody would talk to us from that moment on. From that moment forward. After the Sarge and I had shrunk down small enough to escape, we spent the better part of the night searching the Mistling colony for our firecrackers before we made our way back to the waste disposal airlocks and Melinda Nova. After such a long night, both the Sarge and I needed sleep. But neither of us could close our eyes for long, knowing that the Glorious and Exceptional Squeak could send his guards for us at any moment. Just be yourself was what the Sarge said to me. Why do I ever listen to him? He's 8 years old. When does anything good ever come of just being myself? And that is the end of Chapter 4 of Jump Rangers, a game called Conquest. I'm going to edit this for YouTube, and I am going to post it on YouTube, and I am going to try and make sure that I am ready for a Thursday stream of the mission files. It's going to be tight, and not 100% sure I'm going to make it, but we're going to see if we can't get this thing started. And that stream will be a weekly stream whereby I write a one-shot adventure for Jump Rangers and publish it in the data deck files for subscribers on the Patreon. So, if you'd like to know whether that stream is happening, please follow us on Discord. You can find the links below. And thank you very much for watching the stream. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week for more Ranger stories. Take care.